We're a couple of miles from the Blue Ridge Parkway, a mile from the Appalachian Trail. So a lot of people congregate here to get away.
So if I come up here and I hear banjo music,
it's a good thing here.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the banjos stop, that's when there's a problem.
Welcome to another trip down the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Mike. So grab a glass of your favorite bourbon and kick back.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Loghead's Home Center for supporting this episode of the Bourbon Road. Find out more about their fine rustic furniture at logheadshomecenter.com. We would like to thank our friends at Premium Bar Products for sponsoring this episode. If you're ready to step up your game at your home bar, check out premiumbarproducts.com to choose from their wide selection of glassware, all of which can be custom engraved with your personal message or logo. And there's no minimum order. So after the episode, head over to premiumbarproducts.com and check out everything they have to offer. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. This is Jim Shannon, and I am without Mike today on the road in Virginia. Missing Mike, but Mike is leading a Weller tasting this weekend in Shelbyville, Kentucky. I wish him all the luck on that. But I'm in Virginia. I'm in Montebello, Virginia, with our old host, Randy Minnick. Randy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on. Welcome to Virginia.
Yeah, it's nice of you to invite us into your home. And for the past couple of days, we've been experiencing all things Blue Ridge Mountains on the backs of ATVs, walking the trails, climbing steps up, just seeing it all. It's been a real blast to be out here with you guys and sitting by the fire and eating hot dogs. That was good too.
There you go. West Virginia people say almost heaven. And those of us over here in Virginia say just come a little further east and you will be in heaven.
As Blake Shelton says, this is God's country.
Yeah, it is God's country. And there are more, I guess, hardwood trees in the Shenandoah Valley than anywhere else in the country. So the falls here are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so you came just after peak season, but, glad you're here. And Virginia, this part of Virginia is known more for their cideries, for the orchards and apple cider and whatnot. But they do some bourbon in Virginia, believe it or not.
I think the rest of the world kind of knows they do bourbon over here, but they don't get a lot of attention. So today we're doing Virginia whiskeys, and you brought a Virginia bourbon that we're going to have in the first half.
This is true.
What'd you bring for us?
So it's called Bare Knuckles, and I happened to see Bare Knuckle from Kano Distillery. Kano is out of Manassas, Virginia.
Manassas. Now that's about 20 minutes south of D.C., right?
Well, remember the first battle of Manassas or Bull Run, people came out of D.C. to actually watch the battle during the Civil War, so it's not far. Kano Distillery was started by Carlson and O'Mara, and these guys here, I guess they met, from what I can understand, at the Merchant Marine Academy.
Okay.
And had been friends ever since. And O'Mara there, from what I can understand, actually graduated from the, what did they call that over there? Moonshine University.
Oh, in Louisville, Kentucky.
In Louisville, Kentucky. So there's your connection there between Virginia and Kentucky.
Now, Moonshine University has trained a lot of distillers. No doubt about it.
So he graduated in 2013, and I guess they have been distilling. This distillery actually opened up, I think, broke ground in 2015, and have been doing it ever since. I actually saw somebody from Kano Distillery talking about Bare Knuckle on a program that had to do with law, and jurisdiction of distilled spirits in Virginia.
All right. Well, before we disclose the proof and the mash bill and all those things, why don't we go ahead and get straight to the whiskey like we like to do here?
Okay.
And we'll do that blind to the specs. How's that?
Blind to the specs.
We just know that this is a straight bourbon, right?
It is.
And a straight Virginia bourbon.
Yes.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, it's got a little bit of youth to it, but it's not like an extremely young bourbon. It's just sort of an adolescent.
So these are supposed to be at least 2 years, right? To be straight. This one here says 37 months. So just over 3 years.
Okay, so they're pushing that 4-year point.
They are. And, you know, perhaps it was something they tried and they released it a little bit early because it's actually, I think it's actually not bad.
Okay, so I'm getting a pretty nice nose on it. Now, youth aside, I am getting that corny sweetness that you would expect, and we'll find out about the mash bill later. But I'm also getting a nice little bit of spiciness, not too much.
Which is kind of interesting because the mash bill on this is 70% corn, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley.
So the spice I'm getting on the nose is not from the rye, but it's from the barrel.
There you go. So you
get the same thing sometimes with like a Weller or another wheated whiskey. You can get fooled by it sometimes. That sweetness, it comes off on a little bit of caramel. The vanilla is prevalent, I think, on it. It doesn't have like an amazing nose on it. It's just got sort of an average bourbon nose, I would say. Let's take a sip.
All right.
That's sweet, and I'm getting that spiciness on this on
that mid palate anyway.
There's no rye here, but it's a little spicy.
It is, which is interesting, but it's not too bad. Finish probably is a little more, but as it ages, I don't think that finish is going to be quite as bitter.
It's a little nutty though, for me.
Well, almost like peanut.
Yeah,
like peanut brittle.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, perfect. Peanut brittle.
Peanut brittle, and but you know, Virginia has a nice, wonderful, clean water source. You know. In some good places and good water source. You know, it doesn't have the limestone to filter the water per se, but, you know, and a good place to grow some good grains. So it doesn't surprise me that Virginia probably has some pretty good bourbons here.
Now, that's got a bit of hug to it. I'm surprised.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I expect that of a young one, more of a hug than the smoothness of something that's been aged.
Now, do we know, is this a column stilled or a pot stilled whiskey?
I don't know that.
Don't know. Okay.
I don't know. I'd have to try to do some more research on them. But I just happened to see them mentioned on the program. They were talking about, you know, here in Virginia, you only can get your hard liquors from a Virginia ABC store.
So for people who don't know what an ABC store is or what a controlled state is, right? Can you sort of, what's it like living here?
Okay. So first thing I had to do was go, when you're used to Kentucky and going into any ma and pa place and getting, you know, somebody saving you something or whatever, even a big liquor barn like there in Middletown, you know, outside of Louisville, a lot of choices. Not so much in a Virginia ABC. So ABC, from what I had to go look it up. See, it's Alcoholic Beverage Control Authority is what that stands for. So from what I understand is we know that Prohibition was brought in with the 18th Amendment.
Right.
And the 25th Amendment is the one that took Prohibition out. And the second section of that actually gave control to the states to regulate. You know,
so each of the states at that point has the opportunity to set their own rules regarding how to control liquor in the state.
And it's usually set up in a 3-tier system. So you have your distiller, you have your distributor, and then you have your retailer that sells it. So the Virginia ABC takes care of those second and third steps.
So they're the distributor and
the retailer.
They corner the market.
Basically. But it's done for the good of Virginia citizens.
Oh, doesn't the government always do it for the good of the citizens?
Yes. So, you know, you can't control yourself. We're going to help you. And so, but you were in one. Yeah, Virginia ABC. You know, we do have some choices for bourbons here.
Yeah, so
Kentucky. So
you walk into the ABC store here, and it's, you know, there's not a lot of marketing going on or anything in there, but you come into the store, and it's not all that different from any other bottle shop that you would go into. I mean, they've got a good selection of bourbons. They had 2 good long shelves here of bourbons, and a large number of the top shelf. I think they're promoting their own stuff. All the Virginia bourbons were on the top shelf.
Right.
How about that?
Whether they were priced that way or not.
Whether they're priced that way or right. So there were probably 8 to 10 Virginia bourbons in all.
Yeah, most of them were whiskeys.
Or let's not say,
whiskeys.
Just whiskeys.
Yeah.
Ryes, American whiskeys, and bourbon.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to try this one just because, let's see what it's all about. Most people have heard of Bowman, but even though the name Bowman is famous here in Virginia, I guess you could say, there's some other things going on with Bowman that a lot of people don't know, but you could probably tell.
So Bowman and people around across the country are familiar with Bowman whiskey. And many people know that whiskey does not originate at Bowman.
Right.
Yeah, it's sourced whiskey. In fact, it's coming out of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And we won't talk too much about that because we're here today to talk about whiskeys that are actually distilled and bottled in the state of Virginia and that are also available outside the state of the Virginia. And it's not just bourbons, but it ryes. And I would say in Virginia, there seems to be a bit more rye than bourbon.
Yes. So when I was actually going, okay, what's the connection with Virginia and Kentucky? Most people understand that the western part of Pennsylvania was all in arrears when the Whiskey Rebellion came around, and Alexander Hamilton said, to pay for the Revolutionary War, we were going to tax whiskey. We're going to tax spirits. And I think it was about 9 cents a gallon. That's a lot back in those days,
Sure.
So they were all in arrears, and the Whiskey Rebellion gets put down, and a lot of them come down to Kentucky. But what a lot of people don't realize is that those who fought in the Virginia militia in the Revolutionary War were given tracts of land in what is now Kentucky. So they're given these tracts of land, and they go there, and so George Washington was known for his rye whiskey, #1 distiller in the country at one time.
We were looking for a bottle today.
Yeah. I can get it. It's just going to be. It's not something you can just go find in the regular store. But in 1799, I know this one for a fact, George Washington out of Mount Vernon there distilled 11,000 barrels of whiskey, made about $7,500 that year. And he was the #1 distiller in the country at that time.
Wait a second. He made 11,000 barrels of rye whiskey.
Right.
And that earned him $7,800. Netted him. So he profit of $7,800.
Profit of $7,500.
I was going to say, otherwise, that's a good deal.
Yeah. And so, and people think that he's the one that kind of he was responsible for putting down the Whiskey Rebellion, but he was paying his taxes like everybody else was. It was the little guys that it hurt, And so anyway, these guys were given tracts of land, so they come over and they find that rye doesn't grow quite as well in Kentucky as it did in the northern parts of Virginia. And so you got all that extra corn. What are you going to do? And, of course, the rest is history. But
so it was a mandate to plant corn, more or less.
Yeah.
They had to plant corn.
I think to homestead, you had to have, was it 5 acres you had to grow? Whatever. If you read about Daniel Boone, he was part of
That's how you establish your homestead.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you had to do something with the surplus. And one of the big things about the Whiskey Rebellion was that you couldn't pay in whiskey. You had to pay in cash. And a lot of these guys, whiskey was cash, And so anyway, so Virginia has ties to Kentucky this way anyways, because some of those militiamen came over into Kentucky, what is now Kentucky, and set up, still basically started distilling whiskey in like 1790, so.
Well, as I continue to sip on this, the palate it's a bit, leveled out. It doesn't jut out too much in any one area. It does have that corn sweetness. It's got that little bit of spice. Now knowing it's not rye spice, it's barrel spice. It's got a little bit more hug than I would expect. It's not overly ethanol-y.
But for a young whiskey, I'm actually slightly impressed.
Yeah, I think so.
For a fairly young whiskey.
For me,
Bourbon.
This wouldn't be a daily sipper for me.
No, but it would be a great mixer.
It'd be a great mixer. I agree. In fact, somebody we know very well is actually in the other room right now having this in a mixed drink. So,
yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bare Knuckle. It's supposed to commemorate the women of the early 1900s who actually got in the ring and boxed. So,
oh, really?
yes. So,
Well, that's an interesting story.
Isn't it though? So
yeah, boxing at the turn of the century was you didn't wear gloves. At the very most, you would have a patch of leather over your knuckles, right?
Right. And so it's got a woman on the front of this, in her boxing pose and straight bourbon whiskey distilled at 90%. So 90 proof.
So Randy, what have you been up to? So you've been outside of Kentucky now for what, about 18 months?
No, just over a year, actually.
Just a little over a year? And just getting settled. You're literally a mountain man now.
No.
Jeremiah Johnson.
No, I still get that. You ain't from around here, are you, boy? And so I still get that. But man, it's a different kind of life as you've seen, but it's great. Ride around on the 4-wheeler and
So you do not have cell service here.
No.
And you live literally on top of the mountain.
On top of this ridge.
On top of this particular ridge of the mountain, which is pretty high.
But we're about 2,800. It's not real high, but the rate of ascent from down in the valley coming up here,
which is more or less down there, is more or less sea level.
Yeah.
And you're building a house that's about another 1,000 feet up, right?
Right.
And that house literally sits on the edge of the ridge, overlooking
another ridge that's even taller in the valley below.
And you can almost see Crabtree Falls from there, but not quite. It's around the corner.
Around the corner.
So anybody that's not familiar, Crabtree Falls is about a 1,200-foot natural falls in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's would you say it's positioned equally between Lexington and Stanton?
Or even Lynchburg and Stanton. So it's because you can't say equal between, yes, but over to the east more. So,
but if you're in Richmond, it's about a
2 hour
drive. If you're in Charleston, West Virginia,
3 or so. Yeah.
If you're in Washington D.C., probably
about 3 hours.
About 3 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So not too far to get down here. You want to take a drive on the Blue Ridge Parkway?
We're a couple of miles from the Blue Ridge Parkway, a mile from the Appalachian Trail. So a lot of people congregate here to get away.
So if I come up here and I hear banjo music,
it's a good thing here.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the banjos stop, that's when there's a problem.
All right. Well, everybody I've met up here has been really nice. And, it seems like a great community. It's a small community.
Yes.
I mean, how many people live within a mile of you?
I want to say, so, we just had the election.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was 400 and something voters that are registered to vote over here at the volunteer fire department. So, there's not a lot of people here. Yeah, beautiful place. I love it. I think I'll be able to retire here pretty well.
Well, you've settled in pretty good. All right, Randy. Well, let's continue sipping on our bare knuckle. And when we come back, we'll take a little break.
Gotcha.
And when we come back, I have got a Virginia whiskey for you. You already know what it is, but you haven't tasted it yet.
No, I haven't.
All right, we'll talk then.
All right.
We would like to thank Tommy and Gwen Mitchell from Loghead's Home Center for supporting this episode of The Bourbon Road. Loghead's Home Center, nestled in the hills of Kentucky, is an industry leader in building handcrafted rustic furniture. Family owned and operated, they take pride in offering only the very best for their customers. The Logheads, and that's what they like to call themselves, are skilled woodcrafters who are passionate about creating rustic furniture for people who appreciate the beauty of natural wood. Owners Tommy and Gwen don't just sell the rustic lifestyle, they live it. And you can be sure that Loghead's furniture will always be handcrafted in Kentucky by artisans who embrace the simple way of life. Loghead's rustic furniture is made from northern white cedar, a sustainable wood that's naturally rot and termite resistant. Its beauty and quality will add warmth to your earthy lifestyle for generations to come. Be sure to check out everything they have to offer at logheadshomecenter.com. And while you're at it, give Tommy and Gwen a shout on Facebook or Instagram at Logheads Home Center. Okay, well, we are back, and I kind of really enjoyed that bare knuckle from the first half. I think as we continued to sip on it during the break, I gained a little respect for it as a younger whiskey, but I think they're doing some things right there.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. After you get past the acclimation stage, it kind of grew on me a little bit.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing more from them as their stocks.
Yep. I agree. Give them another 2 or 3, 4 years and see what this is.
Yeah,
like.
I think those young notes will start to disappear. It'll start to get a little bit more richness to it.
Yep.
But the basics there, the basics are there.
They are, and I'm tasting a couple of little different things. Like I don't know that I've ever gotten like a peanut or a peanut brittle.
Yeah,
the nuttiness was there, but it was more of a nutmeg or a pecan. You know what I mean? This was a little bit different. So, well, Jim, I wanted to take a minute to congratulate you and Big Chief. Oh, Mike, you guys have been killing it. I mean, you have people listening to us in Australia.
We do.
A long way off. And when you and I first started this, we'd have to slap somebody upside the head to get 50 listeners.
Well, it takes a while to build a following. I mean, it's a very competitive world. Bourbon podcasts are lumped in with foods podcasts and wine podcasts and beer podcasts. And, as far as, Apple iTunes, what now is called Apple Podcast, is concerned, we're all one big happy family, right?
Right.
Food, drinks, that kind of stuff.
It takes a while for people to find you in that little.
It does. And people are looking at ratings. Advertisers are looking at ratings.
Right.
People are looking at ratings and reviews. And, it just takes a while to build up that following and start climbing the charts and get to a place where you're kind of comfortable and doing well.
Right. And I want to send a shout out to the Roadies. The Bourbon Roadies. This is, man, I'll tell you what, I enjoy every now and again, I'll get on Facebook or whatever, Instagram and see, somebody found a unicorn, hey, I've been looking for months for this one particular thing here. And so what a community.
Yeah.
Bourbon Roadies, you guys are awesome. Thanks for listening to these guys because they're doing it right for you. And anyway, keep up the good work.
And you're a roadie.
Oh, yeah.
One of the original roadies.
Probably so.
Almost the original roadie.
Yeah. But no, it's fun keeping up with you guys.
Yeah.
So, congratulations. And y'all keep doing what you're doing and roadies keep traveling down that bourbon road.
We will. We're lucky this time the road led to Virginia.
Yep.
And happy to be here. I am bringing to you today a rye whiskey from Virginia. And
what a big surprise, Jim. A rye from you?
And, Virginia, as we discussed in the first half, is well known for rye.
Yes, it is.
One of the most famous humans on the planet made some of the very best rye of the time here in Virginia.
At the time, that
we won't say it's better than stuff made today.
And you know what? You're going to have to come back and we'll go to Mount Vernon and get some.
Yeah.
Because the only way you can get George Washington's rye whiskey is to either go to Mount Vernon or have it shipped somewhere in the DC, Virginia area.
Yeah.
But we'll do that, save that for another time.
Yeah, that'll be fun because I really like to taste that. We have had some people on the show before that have talked about that.
Chris Morris, when we did that over there at Woodford with Chris Morris and, Elizabeth O'Neill McCall, he was talking about how they put that still back together. I think it was 2005.
Yeah.
And, but I understand you have a rye for me here that's been very well, been awarded. Probably the most awarded whiskey in Virginia.
So the Catoctin Rye.
Now, how do you say that?
I'm assuming I'm right. Catoctin.
I'm going to call it a concoction. So yeah, go ahead.
Catoctin, Catoctin Creek. Right. And they're out of an area west of Washington, D.C., very near Harper's Ferry, called Purcellville. And, it's, they have a female master distiller there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Becky Harris is their chief distiller there. And, they make some well-received whiskeys there. And their rye is well-respected and has received many awards. And I've not had it before, personally.
I never have either, even though I lived here.
So as a rye lover, I'm ready to try a Virginia rye.
Sure.
This one we're having today is the Catoctin Creek Round Stone Rye. This is a distiller's edition rye. So they have an 80 proof, and then this is a 92 proof distiller's edition. It is called the Round Stone Rye, and it's a single barrel. And it's not age stated, though. So we're not sure of the age of this. But it is 100% rye mash bill.
100%.
100% rye. So we both know from the many discussions we've had with distillers in the past that that's quite the challenge, is to make a high rye mash bill, because rye doesn't play well in the fermenters. It tends to like to bubble up and overflow.
Well, I'll tell you what, they played well on the nose on this thing.
Yeah, let's check it out.
Butterscotch? Am I off? Off there?
I'm getting butterscotch, but I'm also getting that that barrel oak, that barrel note that I don't want to call it young oak because it's not young oak. I'm getting that youthful oak note to it. It does have a good nose. Not great, but good. I think I enjoy that. It's got a little bit of a fruity note to just a hint of a fruity note there, but it's got some anise. I always say anise. That's my reference to a licorice anise fennel kind of thing.
Almost like a liqueur. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's the smell is.
But I like it. The only thing for me is that sort of that little bit of a woody note there.
Gotcha.
A little bit off-putting, but not too bad. All right, let's taste it. Cheers.
All right, so cheers.
Oh, that's sweet.
Sweet, and it's smooth all the way across.
Yeah, it doesn't have that mid-palate spice, but it really gets you on the sides and the back of the tongue.
Yeah.
Kind of sits there. I want to continue sipping on that.
I thought that I would get something across the middle, and I did not. It went straight across and back, and the finish was actually, man.
Yeah, and so the oak is coming through a little bit more and not so youthful on the back of the palate. So it's a nice oak on the back of the palate.
But even though I smelled butterscotch, I did not taste it. I got almost like a vanilla cream kind of thing,
It's it does have a very nice mouthfeel. It's got a kind of an oily, buttery,
but it dissipates it's quickly.
Let me check the bottle here. Okay, this is not chill filtered.
Okay.
Yeah, it dissipates. The finish on it is kind of medium, I think.
And we don't know the age on this at all then.
It's not stated. Now, I've heard that they use smaller barrels. I've heard that I can't confirm
how
that.
small?
30 gallon.
30 gallon
barrels,
okay.
Which are not, they're not 15 gallon, but smaller barrels. Whether or not they still do that or that's their way of operating now, I'm not sure. But, Catoctin Creek, if you're listening to this, reach out to us. We're happy to make any corrections that we might get wrong. But I will tell you this, I like it.
I do.
I think it's a good rye. I think it's got a nice, it's not a balanced, because the nose and the palate are not really joined well together, but they're both enjoyable. I think the nose a little bit got that youthful oaky note to it, but the palate, palate's a little bit better on that part.
And, there was the day way back when I didn't think I would like a rye. And then along came the Carters and that number 3. And then Wilderness Trail did something right. And Jim turned me on to these ryes. And you know what? I really like them now.
When I'm drinking whiskeys that are under 4 years in age, sometimes I get this note. And it's kind of, and I don't know how to put my finger on it. But have you ever had a Necco candy?
No, I have not.
They're like a chalky wafer candy.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's probably been a while since you had one, but they're like a chalky wafer. And every now and then I will get that, but I don't remember the last time I got that on a rye. But I'm getting a little bit of it now.
Really?
On the finish, a little bit of chalkiness, kind of a little bit drying. I like the finish on it. I think it outperforms the front end of the palate. I think it's kind of a little. It's the nicer part of this.
Okay, I will agree that it outperforms the front.
Yeah. So in that case, when you have the back of the palate and the front of the palate disjointed, the nose disjointed from the palate, you're talking about something that's not well balanced. But balance isn't always what you're going for, right?
No.
Sometimes you're looking for that something out of the box, something a little bit different. I think this is a good rye. I think 92 proof is probably still a bit low for it. I think that, they have their 80 proof expression and the 92 proof expression. I would be looking for something a little bit higher proof on this.
And you know me, if it's at that 100 bottle and bond level kind of thing, that's kind of where I'm at. 100 is just, I don't know, 100% me.
Yeah. Well, for this one, I think it's fair to say that I would sip on this because I think it's very respectable. I think it earned its awards. They're quite well deserved. I've got a particular rye I like the profile that I'm after.
Right.
This doesn't necessarily match that, but that doesn't mean it's not a good rye. This is probably something that a lot of people would find very nice.
So if I'm sitting around the fire and I bring this out and I say, Jim, have some of this, you'd be okay.
Oh, I'd absolutely be okay. I would love to sip on this. This is fine. It's just not in my core profile. I think those youthful oak notes that I'm getting from it, they're kind of an indication, I think. Maybe if they are still using the smaller barrels, those smaller barrels will introduce that oak quicker into that smaller amount of juice.
And stay for a longer period of time, probably, yes.
So, but anyway, my hat's off to Catoctin Creek. I think they've made a fine whiskey here. I think for me, it's a sipper. Probably not going to share a bottle with not going to invite my friends over and say, hey, you got to try this Catoctin Creek. Probably not going to wrap up a bottle as a gift and give it to somebody. But will I sip on it around the fire? Absolutely.
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect from some, what Virginia was doing. When you get in Kentucky, you kind of get spoiled, I guess you could say. And came over here, but I'm pleasantly surprised. Yeah, with both of these, with Bare Knuckle and
I think both of these distilleries, they're both young distilleries. So Catoctin Creek started in 2009.
Okay.
And Bare Knuckle started in 2015, you said, right? So these are both relatively young distilleries that are still finding their way, finding their path to what they want to be long term. And, it's very difficult in the beginning, particularly in the middle of a whiskey boom, bourbon boom, that you would produce whiskeys and have a hard time, keeping the shelves full because they're under such great demand.
Right.
So a lot of times it's hard for them to have aging stocks, that are maturing to the level where you and I like to see them. Right. Simply because they're flying off the shelf so fast that they've got to just keep producing.
Right.
So I think they'll get a chance in the future to catch up.
To put some in reserve and actually age some and experiment on that back end of that.
And hone their craft and decide, which expressions need a little more TLC and which ones are already spot on and they just want to continue to age. So, hats off to both these distilleries. Catoctin Creek, I think, is a little more well-known and more widely distributed than Bare Knuckle. I know.
Well, KO, this isn't all that KO does is the Bare Knuckle, but it's still, I had never heard of it before until I saw that program. Because, I go, when I first go in and I start looking at bourbon, see, this isn't where I would have looked first, we had to kind of seek these out, if you will.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
So, but I'm like you, hats off. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the future.
Right. So you and I are still spending a little bit of time together. We've been here with you guys for 3 days now. And in the course of those 3 days, you have absolutely introduced us to the Appalachian lifestyle.
Well, what did you think about the cideries? Because Virginia is, really known for that. And it was something, believe it or not, Thomas Jefferson really enjoyed doing over at Monticello too. And so, you guys had a little bit of that experience today.
Yeah, I thought it was good. We visited 2 different cideries. And so I was a little bit surprised at what a Virginia cider is. As a Virginia cider is a little bit more like what you would expect to get in a brew pub if you order a cider, a little bit more effervescent, more seltzery.
Seltzery. Yeah, that's a good word.
Kind of a, in my history, in my past, I'm more used to more of a hard cider, carbonated. Non-carbonated ciders. But that's the way they do it here.
And so I'm used to North Georgia cider.
Yeah.
And these aren't quite as sweet. In fact, I heard somebody, it's almost like an apple beer, a little bit, or an apple seltzer, like you would say.
And the flavors are faint. Yes. So they're faint. So it's
not in your face. You're not going to get cinnamon all up in your face. This is just it's a little bit different.
It's different. I enjoyed it. The cideries here are beautiful. They're just like what you would expect going to a distillery, a small craft distillery, and anywhere else. You're going to find the equipment and the bar and the tasting bar and the shop and the all the things, the flights and the other things that you do. It's pretty neat.
A lot of things to do in Virginia, just saying.
Yeah. Well, I particularly enjoyed your introduction to ATV cross country.
It's a little different than what you'll find in parts of, say South Georgia and Tennessee. You can get some of this in Tennessee and Eastern Kentucky, but you almost do a little rock hopping here.
Yeah.
And so, how many people get to run an ATV trail down the side of the Tye River,
Yeah. So you took us to a little hidden waterfall. I shouldn't say a little. We're not going to tell anybody where it is, but you took me to a waterfall that is probably 200 to 300 feet tall.
Right.
And hundreds and hundreds of thousands of gallons coming through that a minute. I mean, just a wash.
You came here right after a rain.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that, during the summertime. It's not a trickle. There's always water on that particular waterfall. Just like there's always water coming down Crab Creek Falls. You're always going to get it because we're at the top, but you came right after that. And so whereas I would have walked across, I'm not going to do that now. I'll get washed away.
So if somebody's coming to this area and they say, hey, I want to go to the Blue Ridge Mountains and I want to go to the Appalachian Trail and I want to go to the area that Jim and Randy talked about on the show that time, what are they looking for here? Where should they go and what should they visit?
Well, if you're talking about just the Montebello area here, there's only about 2 or 3 places. So, you've got the Montebello, where the Montebello Country Store is. There's a campground right across from there in a little trout pond. Just down the road from there is Crabtree Falls, and they've got a little camping area there. If you want a place to stay, most people come here to hike. Like I said, Montebello itself is less than a mile from the trail leading up to the Appalachian Trail, and Spy Rock and the Priest are there. You talk about beautiful places.
So Spy Rock and the Priest, those are 2 places that are well known on the Appalachian Trail.
They are, and people will make day trips there and head out before sunrise so they can watch the sun.
And how far from here, if we hop on the Blue Ridge Parkway, how far from here to say Wintergreen Ski Resort?
From here, you're probably looking at 35 minutes or so. Okay. When you don't run into fog like we did when we were on there. But Wintergreen Ski Resort's, less than 45 minutes away.
And from Wintergreen, you've got cideries, you've got distilleries, you've got breweries, you've got all kinds of different places you can go to, a lot of different restaurants. What about historical places?
Just down the road from Montebello is where Cyrus McCormick basically, I guess you could say, presented the first grain reaper and went on to do, to start International Harvester. And any farmer around knows what International Harvester is.
So it started out as McCormick and then McCormick Deering and became International Harvester.
Yeah. And so the first grain reaper was actually, tried out right here in Steele's, down the road there in Steele's Tavern. And so, down the road is where Sam Houston was born. And then you get to Lexington and, there's, Robert E. Lee's buried there with his horse and family, and, Stonewall Jackson's place is there. And, Monticello's basically right outside of
which is Thomas Jefferson's home.
Right.
And then we're, like you said, 2 hours from Richmond, 3 hours from D.C. So there is both Civil War and Revolutionary War historical sites around here.
That's true. And 3 hours to jump on, you can head down and hit the Amtrak train in Stanton there and head up to DC and, take some transportation in or try to drive yourself. And Smithsonian's there. And, I will say this about the Smithsonian. I had an uncle take me there when I was a teenager. And at that time, what one of the people at the museum told us is you could stand in front of every item on display at the Smithsonian for 2 seconds, and it would take you 70 years to see everything they had to see. And everything that they have is not on display.
I thought I'd seen it all. I lived in D.C. I didn't live in D.C. I actually lived in Woodbridge, which is very close to Manassas.
Right.
And I worked in Arlington in Crystal City. And every member of my family would come visit, and my friends would come visit, and anybody I knew in my entire life would come visit because now they knew somebody in Washington, D.C.
Right.
So on everybody's list was the Smithsonian. And it seems like I felt like I'd seen the whole thing, but obviously from what you just said, not even close.
No, there's just so much. And in the history here, most of it is, a lot of it, you got the 1700s, and then you got Jamestown just down the road there, Roanoke. And some, we're talking 1600s.
Yeah, you're in the core of like early American history here. Yeah. There's a lot of...
And I love it. My wife accuses me of reading the sign. She goes, you read the sign, tell me what it said. Yeah, a lot of great stuff to do here. I'm going to be very satisfied to go pour me a cup of coffee and sit out on that deck and look out over the ridge, watch the seasons change, and who knows, sip on some good stuff. And
well, Randy, it's been a pleasure to visit with you again. I think you will always be an honorary co-host of the Bourbon Road.
Hey, I always appreciate it. This has been fun, and keep chasing that unicorn dream out there, because it's fun to see somebody score a big one. They've been working for a while to get that.
Absolutely. Well, we'd like to invite everybody to take this opportunity and visit the Bourbon Road Facebook page. On the Bourbon Road Facebook page, you'll hear all kinds of stuff about the Bourbon Road. But the most important thing we'd like you to do is look for that groups button on the Facebook page and go to the Bourbon Roadies Facebook group. That's our private group where people who are like-minded, who enjoy the show, gather and talk about all things bourbon. We take pictures of bourbon. We share bourbon with each other. We share pictures, do reviews. But we want you to join the Bourbon Roadies. We're going to ask you 3 questions. We want to make sure you're 21 years old, that you're getting yourself into a bourbon group, and that you also understand that we enforce niceness. We want you to be good when you're on there. We don't want you to slam anybody, tell anybody their decisions on their bourbon is bad. We just want you to get along. Now, do we want you to tell the truth about what you taste? Yeah, if you drink a bourbon and you don't like it, tell everybody you don't like it. Tell them why you don't like it.
That would be the key right there. Why?
Why?
So what was it about it that you didn't necessarily care for?
A fair review.
But remember, your bourbon, your way. So,
nobody will jump on you for your review. Now, they might disagree with you, but they're not going to trash your review.
Right.
So we invite you to come on to the Bourbon Roadies and spend a little time with us. We've got master distillers in there, industry experts. Virtually everybody who's ever been on the show is a Bourbon Roadie. And we're just a good group of people that like the same thing. We also have an Instagram page at the Bourbon Road. By the way, our Facebook page is at the Bourbon Road. We have a website called thebourbonroad.com. And on the Bourbon Road website, you'll find our blog. Mike does a blog every week on our long format show, which is an hour-long show with guests usually. On Mondays, we do a Craft Distillery Monday review, which is a review of a craft bourbon or sometimes a big boy, but it's usually a short format show. And usually we'll release a recipe at the end there of something to do with bourbon cooking. It's kind of neat. Mike couldn't be with us today. You can find him at One Big Chief. I'm Jay Shannon 63, and we will see you down the Bourbon Road. appreciate all of our listeners, and we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with us here on the Bourbon Road. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if so, we would appreciate if you'd subscribe and rate us a 5-star with a review on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Bourbon Road. That way you'll be kept in the loop on all the Bourbon Road happenings. You can also visit our website at thebourbonroad.com to read our blog, listen to the show, or reach out to us directly. We always welcome comments or suggestions, and if you have an idea for a particular guest or topic, be sure to let us know. And again, thanks for hanging out with us.